Hey, good morning. Sumit on this side. So this is going to be a video about my approach to coding using coding agents. I'm building software full time. I live in a small village in the Himalayas. I live in West Bengal, the northern part of West Bengal, in a very, very remote village. I barely have broadband. I don't really have broadband. Yeah, I've been a software engineer for 18 years. I've been early to much of the open source ecosystem, particularly when it came to like web facing stuff from content management systems. I started off with PHP. I had C++ in my college days. And then I moved to Python. So about 7 years in PHP, 10 years plus in Python. And of course, a lot of JavaScript slash TypeScript, and recently Rust for the last 3 years. I do not read or write code anymore, and this is going to be a video about how I'm managing all of my products and projects. I have client projects, three of them, and more are actually waiting. I just don't have enough bandwidth. I have no team, I have zero team, and I do all of this myself. This is my typical workflow that I'm going to show you, just shortening so that this fits in the screen share. And yeah, this is how it is at the moment, all of these tabs. So let's just quickly get an orientation of the tools. So I have a code editor. I wouldn't say it's an editor because I don't really edit code as much, but yeah, for viewing code, I use Z. Z has been my favorite IDE slash editor for quite a while. I'm just going to install this extension, by the way. So just again, reorienting so that everybody can see. I'm just going to install this anyway. So, and then I have all my prompts. I sometimes write longer prompts, and then all the prompts are all here. They are not really maintained as such, tons of them. Just kind of think of them as my scratchpad, nothing more. And a lot of them are just like like reusing parts of other prompts. I reuse a lot, particularly this one, for example, is currently my default prompt, the starting sentence, and my prompts are generally very small, but I'll show you all of those details, maybe a little bit of excerpts, examples. One thing I want to declare upfront is, even though I do not read or write code, it does not mean that engineering has kind of taken a step back from software development. I think software development still has a lot of engineering, and that is mostly how we think, the patterns, what components are we to use, how do you structure your solution, etc. That still stays, because without that, it's going to be really hard to build good software. So I'm not talking about throwaway software. I'm talking about well built software that works well, production grade. And I'm not saying this because I've been using this method for the last few months. None of these projects are live in a large way that it has a lot of users. So for sure, you can take it in with a pinch of salt. But I'm also a person who has been through 18 years of very rigorous software engineering. I've been in Google Summer of Code in 2004. If anybody knows Google Summer of Code, 4, 5 maybe. So yeah, have been in the open source community, Linux community since maybe 2000. So I'm not somebody who doesn't come from that software background. Much of it's self-taught. I'm not from an engineering school or a college, something like that. But yeah, I did have computer science. What I'm going to show you is how I think the future of software is evolving. The future of building software is back in the hands of builders. That's what I really love about it. I have a very chilled, very relaxed life here. I live in a village, and this is a life I've chosen. But there's nothing stopping me from building all the software that I am working on at the moment. So let's just have a quick glance. My tabs on my terminal. So my even numbers are where I run either the backend or the front end, depending on the project, or sometimes maybe more. So this project is a little more complicated, and it has many parts to it. I'm probably going to explain a bit of the parts later on, but just in summary, it has Postgres database, it has a Rust-based backend, it has the GUI, which is, in my case, by the way, all backends are Rust-based, all my GUIs are SolidJS TypeScript-based, strong typing everywhere. I strongly believe in the ideas of type-driven development, in parsing so that when the data is in your system, you're confident that this is what it is supposed to be, etc., etc. So all of those are always grounding policies, grounding principles, let's say. Sometimes they're documented, sometimes I just maybe just throw in the words in the prompts, and that's good enough because the models are smart enough to figure out what I mean. And because of this tendency to use types everywhere, even the APIs are strongly typed. The errors that happen through these basic type related neglect are really low. They barely happen, I would say. Okay, so most of my projects, like I said, have this very similar structure. And then like I said, my event tabs are for running the backend, front end, whatever. So 2, 4, 6. 6 is another project. 8 is another project. 8, I'm building a template of this structure that I have for myself, but there also sometimes I do run projects, but the same pattern. So then 9, 7, 5, 3 are for running coding agents. Okay, so for each project, so the 2 and 3 is for data, 4 and 5 is for Volunteer Hub. This is a volunteer management project that we are building for a client. Then 6 and 7 is for another client where we are building a medical report processor, parser, etc., and then an AI based helper on top. Is mostly for doctors, patients. You could say it's also a patient health record app. I think that's what is called, what it is called. And the thing is that all of these have, like I said, the core backend and the front end all share a lot of the same technology, same principles, strongly typed. I can show you the structure for my own product, which is Dweta, which is currently I'm working on pretty actively, and also some of the ideas that drive it. So first of all, this high dependence on types. Okay, so first of all, the backend is here. Okay, this is Dweta API. All of them either have backend or some APIs. That's the typical name I go for. I do mix between API and calling it backend, but yeah, maybe I'll stick with backend. But then GUI is almost always called GUI. GUI is solid.js based, TypeScript based, and the types actually come from the front end. So if you go into types, these types are actually generated from the Rust types. So if you go into shared types, all the projects have shared types. All of my projects have shared types. And this is where the Rust types are actually written. And again, when I say written, I mean all is written by AI. I don't write the code anymore, but I know the structure because I've given the structure. And then Dweta API uses those imports directly that create the shared types create. So it gets the actual API payload types directly. So it's either input types if it is a post request, output, of course, JSON type. So all of that goes through the same types. And then the GUI is using the same types. So these types are generated by, there is a binary in the shared types folder which generates this. So this crate has this binary, which is basically nothing but import all the types, the Rust types, and just export to string, export to string, export to string. That's it. Very simple structure. Once you set up this structure, it's actually very easy to work with it. And most of the times what I do is I will probably open up all of these, like these tabs, by the way, they stay open all the time. I shut down the computer, but I like a terminal opens up as it is. I'm using iTerm and it just opens up with all the tabs intact. So I do not have to open these tabs, and that would be very laborious every day. So yeah, that's mostly it. That's mostly the high level of it. Here's something that I need to finish. Let me finish this, and I'm going to show you also. Sometimes, like this is a good example of sometimes where maybe I have not thought through a task. So here, what I was doing was I noticed that all of my schema tables, like my database schema tables for Dweta, were using i64, so integers, 64-bit integers, and I wanted to not use that simply because Dweta is like a personal use product. This is Dweta, by the way. This is like a data extractor on top of emails and stuff. I maybe show it in a separate video. I already have a few videos on it, but the thing is that I don't need 64-bit primary key or foreign keys. Okay, it's just not necessary for this kind of a product. So I was like, okay, let's switch to 32-bit. And then when it did the change, I realized that, oh, okay, it said the model said that the SQLite stuff is the data in the SQLite DB is still 64-bit physically. I was like, okay, why? That is surprising to me. So I would read these, not the code. I would read these a lot. That's my main modus operandi. That's how I work, is that I read these and I negotiate with the models a lot. And then I said, oh, okay, that's interesting. Why is this, does SQLite not support 32-bit? And it said, yeah, it does, but these are affinities, you could say aliases in a way. They are not storage width, so the storage does not shorten, and that's what I was really going for when I wanted to move from 64-bit to 32-bit, right? And I simply said, okay, then let's just revert it. And before reverting, I simply checked that my git status was like all these modified files were there. I was like, yeah, okay, revert should be easy. And yeah, I asked it and it did it, and done. I'm done. So what I would do now is, like my prompts are so small. Just to give you an example, so I want to show you a specific thing that I want it to build. So when I go to this financial page, this page is giving an error. It used to work, but we have changed the internals, and maybe the API has not changed, or something has gone wrong. I have kind of lost track, but that's not the hard part. It's actually easy for it to figure out. So let's start a new prompt. I just started a new prompt. I'm going to say, refer the develop. So this simply gives the project structure. Okay, and then I'll say, so this is just to give you an idea of how short my prompts are. In GUI app page with URL, I can just say page this is showing error. So that's it. That's my prompt. So if I need to debug, if I need to figure out what has gone wrong, I generally do take, from the browser, you can open your inspector, and I would, for example, in this case, I would take console logs and paste them if I need to do that. But that's sometimes just not necessary. There is a major pattern in my development process when it comes to like allowing the models and also my thought processes to mature slowly, is that I create a lot of these sub crates, which you may have noticed already, in that, for example, in Twitter, there are many crates. So this is a crate. This is a crate. I mean, in Rust, by the way, they're like modules, they're like libraries, you could say. This is a crate, right? The benefit of this is that everything will, of course, get plugged back into the data API, because at the end of the day, this is a GUI product. So the GUI has to consume the data coming from the API, and the API will have to, of course, get everything, whatever kind of data processors, whatever I have, right? But to keep them separate means that I can test them. Now, for example, if I go into this template-based financial extractor, I can actually test this on the CLI, which is a huge benefit because it just makes my life so much easier when I'm running this. So for example, cargo run, oops, minus P, I believe I have it in history. Yes. So I'm just processing, let's say, let's say the Airtel bills. Airtel is a telecom company. I have bills in my email inbox. That's in my database. That's already stored locally because, data already downloads. Now, of course, this CLI tool has access to it. As you can see, these are my emails. Oh, you can see already the UI has a little bit of this bug, but that's okay. We'll get that sorted. But as you can see, the emails are here, right? And then I can simply go ahead and I can read these. So what I want to do is, for a particular sender, I'm going to figure out my bills. Okay, so it's going to do extraction from the emails with the slightly AI assisted extractor that I built, but that was also built step by step in this manner. So all of the testing happens like this. So I create a CLI and then I can run it. Let's just wait for this to finish. We'll see. It should give me a good representation. Remember that what you are seeing right now is an end of maybe a multi-week thinking process, figuring out, finding errors, getting into problems, solving the edge cases, and then only do you get to see such nice data coming out, because this is a fairly like non-trivial part of the system. It takes emails, it builds reverse templates out of multiple emails, does a word edit distance calculation, finds out where, basically, like, imagine that when a telecom company is maybe sending a bill, it'll probably have the same pattern, right? The same template, just the numbers and the date, etc. will change. So we're trying to extract that template, reverse extract that, like extract the reverse template, you could say, right? And that means that they will have placeholders. That's what I'm trying to extract. So it shows you the placeholders that it has found, it detects them, and with AI, then it labels them as to issue date, total amount, etc. And these names, these variable names, actually come from the types. Again, remember, everything is type based, so these are actually coming from the types that we have, where the data, once it is processed, will enter the database. So unclean data never enters the database. That's how all my software is built. And that's it. Now you run this, the template is generated once. By the way, for similar emails from the same sender, the template will be generated once. The variables will also be extracted with AI only once. So you can have thousands of those emails, but after that, the processing is super fast. Okay, even the processing of the template is actually very fast, because I can show that to you in a separate video, but it's a very carefully done, very step-by-step process agent, which actually works mostly deterministically. Only tiny part of translating the variables does it use large language models. So yeah, really efficient. I have used small models, really small. By default, I'm using Gemini Flash, I believe. I can check. It should be mentioned here somewhere. I'm guessing Gemini Flash, or is it not mentioned? Okay, maybe it's not mentioned here, but yeah, by default, I'm using Gemini Flash. I have, oh yes, this is Gemini 3 Flash. I also have used local models. I have used Ministral, and it also works with that, but of course the prompt needs much more tweaking. But you can imagine this is also the pattern for all of my other products. So the product that I have for extracting data from medical reports for the patient health record app that we are building has a very similar agent. So the agents here are always very tiny. Like, the actual AI part is very tiny, all of the products that I build, because efficiency is key. So for example, if I give it a PDF file here, of course this is going to be a different command. I have it in history, so I can give it a text file, I can give it a PDF file, whatever. And the lab report test codes, remember, there are only certain number of tests, medical tests, that happen in the world, right? So there is a master list that we preserve. Then we do a lot of string matching from the report that the user has submitted. Of course, we go from PDF to text, and then text we format, we preserve the format, and then we extract data from that text. All of this happens fairly fast. As you can see, this was a large PDF. I think this was like 40-page PDF, and the data comes out extracted. So that's the whole point. That's how I build software. None of the code is actually handwritten. None of the code is hand reviewed. I cannot emphasize this enough. Nothing that I build these days. I'm working for 3 clients. I have others waiting. I have my 2 or 3 of my own products. Yeah, as you can see, this layout has now more or less settled, and I do not overwork. I do not spend more than 8 to 9 hours a day, and that too, I have lots of breaks in between, because I'm also investing into farms, livestock, etc. So yeah, I hope this helps. This gives you a starting point to think that, like, in my opinion, software is coming back to builders. Okay, that's the one thing I strongly see as a pattern. I'm seeing this again and again. Software is coming back to builders. If you have solid engineering skills, you will do so much better with coding agents. Coding agents will not, I mean, sure, there will be a time in future where coding agents will also be able to do a lot of the higher level engineering thought process. I'm sure that will happen. But till the time that happens, you know your project best. But also, you should know a lot of the deeper underlying things. So for example, in this particular project, when the project came to me, the client, who is a doctor, had originally involved a consultancy company. The company was using any given PDF, was directly using Google Vision APIs to extract data from the PDF. It was neither correct nor was it efficient, because for sure the whole grounding into types and figuring out, like, if you look at the source code of this, even the types, even the units are in types. Like, it's so nice to look at this, because of course it has been a few months that I'm working on this, a couple months that I've been working on this. It's now in such a shape that I can vouch for it. I'll show you the types, that even these are typed. This is an enum in Rust. So when we parse, right, we really know if it is correct. Did we parse correctly, or we just give up? That's it. There is no error situation. That possibility does not exist. How we work on strings is extremely like targeted. In most cases, by the way, the coding agents, if you negotiate with them, they will come up with nice algorithms. They will suggest nice algorithms. So for example, the word edit distance, Levenstein distance, this was part of its suggestion. I also knew it from my own working history. But some of these things you can actually ask the models. So it's all about this continuous improvement, right? Build small CLIs to try out with actual data, etc., and then plug it into the API, and then of course your GUI. That has been my pattern. It has worked really well. I have been able to manage all of these projects or products all by myself with just a virtual team. Okay, that's it. I hope it gives you some ideas. If you need some extra details, please feel free to reach out. Have fun. Thank you.